The Silence and the Fury is now available, introducing 2 new lords to the Vortex and Mortal Empires campaigns. On the one side, we have Oxyotl, the John Rambo of Skinks, who takes the Lizardmen to a total of 7 legendary lords. A Chameleon Skink with a tiny mistrust of chaos, no doubt from his lengthy vacation in the Dark God's realm. Now that he is back in the world, he's on a mission to smite the evil that has taken root. He's a simple skink with simple aims and some simple but enjoyable mechanics. First, there are the Visions of the Old Ones, where you are tasked with completing missions every 10 turns. Each new set of visions will contain 3 locations around the map, where the Disciples of Evil are performing their horrid deeds. The missions that spawn range from destroying an enemy army or faction, to capturing or destroying a settlement, to defending your own territory against incursions by armies of chaos. This mechanic gives the Lizardmen a new interesting way to play, where you get to interact with many different races and set up distant colonies from which to spread order, or simply to invade a faction you have taken a dislike to. Each new mission that is spawned comes with bonuses that can be earned through the mission's completion, along with penalties that are applied if the mission is ignored or failed. While the mechanic is fun, it's not without its flaws. Firstly, with there only being 3 missions every 10 turns, it's quite easy to complete them all, and you will often find yourself waiting around for the next batch. On the one hand, this does give you some breathing room to wage your own wars, independent of the visions, but mostly, it just feels like you are killing time until more missions become available. The mechanic would be more interesting, or perhaps engaging is the right term, if there were more missions that needed to be completed in each batch, forcing you to make some tough choices about which tasks to prioritize. What bonuses from the few missions you can complete do you want the most? What penalties are you willing to live with in the short or long term? Speaking of which, the current penalties don't really have much of an impact upon your campaign. You may see something like the enemy army will receive extra melee defense if they are not destroyed, but since each new batch of missions is random, you may not encounter that army ever again. Perhaps the armies that invade your lands in the missions should be based on those you ignored previously, with them keeping their bonuses against you so they are more of a threat when they invade. I also think there was a missed opportunity with the Visions of the Old Ones, in that the missions are not connected in any form of narrative. It would have been nice to see the missions building upon earlier ones, in some narrative that has Oxyotl encountering characters from the various chaotic factions, perhaps leading to a story that actually ties Oxyotl and Taurox's campaigns together. A second issue is the difficulty of a number of the missions, with most being far too easy, even in the late game. While the missions come in 3 levels of difficulty, they do not build up from easy in the early game, to moderate in the mid-game, to hard in the late game. No, instead the difficulty level of the missions is random, and you will often find yourself facing easy missions, with extremely easy enemies late into your campaign, which makes for some very one-sided encounters. Moving on to the second mechanic which Oxyotl's faction can use, the Silent Sanctums, where you can unlock hidden sanctums at any settlement on the map which you have uncovered through the Fog of War. Each sanctum allows for the construction of a number of different buildings within the 3 slots available. The buildings can provide all sorts of bonuses to your faction. There is the Inner Sanctum, which grants visibility over the region that the sanctum is built in, and can be upgraded to the Grand Sanctum to extend that visibility to all adjacent regions. Very useful for keeping an eye on what your enemies are up to, or even for scouting out a location revealed by the Visions of the Old Ones missions. There are also 3 different military buildings that can be constructed, providing bonuses to your units in melee, extending the range and damage of your ranged units, or upgrading the overall defensive stats of your armies. Each of these buildings also have upgrades which can be purchased. These buildings in the Sanctum can improve your armies in the region quite a lot, making invasions of your neighbours much easier if you have planned ahead and built up a sanctum or two in their territory. The final set of buildings grant anything from reduced army upkeep to casualty replenishment to patrols that have a chance to intercept enemy armies inside your territory. The most unique of the options, though, is the Capstone of Tepoch, which can only exist in one sanctum at a time. If you build it in a second settlement, the original will be demolished. This building allows Oxyotl's army to travel to the region it's in from anywhere on the map. It's important to note this building does not affect your ability to transport to your capital, which is always available. This makes it possible to effectively defend a colony on the far side of the map, as Oxyotl can quickly move there. A very nice addition. All in all, I consider the Silent Sanctums a great addition to the game. However, there is one small nitpick. I think they are too easy to unlock, and having sanctums dotted all over the map is perhaps too attainable. I think the main issue is that the gems you need to unlock the sanctums are just too easy to come by. Cutting back on the gems rewarded for the visions of the old ones would help resolve this and make the sanctums more special. So, we have looked at Oxyotl's mechanics. How about the new units that the Lizardmen have received? We have the Chameleon Stalkers, who have the unique ability to automatically pepper an enemy unit with missile fire just before charging into melee combat. It's the first time we have seen this effect in Warhammer, and it will be interesting to see how it will be used as we move into Game 3. The Stalkers are also surprisingly good at holding the front line, and in my Oxyotl campaigns, I have yet to recruit any Saurus as a result. Alongside the Stalkers, we have the Feral Troglodon, effectively a mobile artillery platform with its long-range acid spit. The Troglodon also features as part of the Skink Oracle hero, acting as their permanent mount. There is a bit of a controversy, I'd guess you could say, around the colour palette that Creative Assembly chose for the Troglodons, with them being a dark green rather than the more lawful pale green or creamy colour, hence the name the Pale Death. I'm not overly fussed with this at the moment, as I'm sure there's an enterprising modder out there who will resolve this minor issue. The Skink Oracle that rides atop the Troglodon is a new magic user for the Lizardmen, with a predetermined list of spells, so no choosing from the different laws. On the tabletop, the Oracle could not cast spells themselves, but instead acted as a conduit. Creative Assembly have dropped that from their version, probably to simplify their addition to the game. For a magic user, they come with some good melee stats, thanks to the Troglodon, and while their spell selection is limited, the spells themselves can be quite useful. The final unit for the Lizardmen is the Coatl, a flying serpent with bright colourful feathers on its wings. It comes with a number of abilities, such as lightning spells, and the ability to hide units that are moving under it within a confined area. It's a great addition and can really help with surprise attacks when using its stealth effect. However, some of the animations seem a little off when it's engaged in combat against a single target. While the new units are enjoyable, I feel that Creative Assembly missed out on an opportunity to give us a Skink cavalry option. The Kulchan Riders would have been a fantastic addition as part of this release, fitting in with the more skirmish-focused playstyle that Oxyotl brings. I do believe we will see another Lizardman Lord in Game 3, but I very much doubt they will be part of a Lord pack with additional units. As such, sadly, I think the window of opportunity for the Kulchan Cavalry has passed us by, much like the chances of seeing Araby or Albion or the Amazons join the game. Facing off against Oxyotl is Taurox the Brass Bull, a beast of endless rage and fury who roams the world, destroying everything in his path. It's his way of blowing off steam. Taurox is the 4th Beastman Lord added to the game, and brings with him a rampage mechanic that makes him more deadly than the average Beast Lord, and a momentum mechanic that allows you to string together multiple battles in the same turn. As you win battles, you earn momentum, which in turn increases your rampage level. There are 3 rampage tiers, each having 5 rewards that you can choose from when the end of the tier is reached. In addition, you can spend your momentum to reset your campaign movement. You need to be careful though, not to spend too much too quickly, as that will cause you to lose your Rampage. It's a good system that fits in very well thematically with Taurox's lore and personality. I don't see any major issues with the mechanic, and when you combine it with all the new toys the Beastmen have received in the Old World update, it makes Taurox's campaign a lot of fun. Something the Beastmen have been sorely lacking for a number of years, but now have in spades. So, with Taurox's mechanics out of the way, let's take a look at the new units that are joining him and bolstering the roster of the Cloven ones. First up, we have the Tuskgore Chariots, which are an early cavalry option for the Beastmen. While the roster as a whole is not short on speed, the availability of a chariot with high impact damage that can disrupt enemy formations is very handy early on, before your more powerful units become available. There is also the Doombull Lord, representing the most powerful of the Minotaurs, next to Taurox of course, and the new Wargore Hero, which helps flesh out the Beastmen's somewhat limited agent options. There are also 2 big ticket items for the Beastmen, which must have cost Creative Assembly every Charlemagne in their vaults. These beasts I would consider must-haves for the Beastmen roster, and now I would find it very hard playing the Beastmen without them. There is the Gorgon, a massive 4-armed beast that is well suited to one-on-one battles with monsters, but is also very effective at tearing into blobs of infantry too. It's fast, ferocious, and causes terror. Its only weakness is it's quite vulnerable to missile fire, so be sure to protect it from those pesky archer and gunpowder units where you can. Then we have my favourite unit of the entire DLC, a hideous beast, but also mesmerisingly beautiful in its own way. Of course, I'm talking about the Jabberslythe. It's an anti-infantry killing machine that can decimate your enemy's front line remarkably quickly. It causes terror, spits acid out from its body in an aura around itself, and can almost fly. And to see it try to take off is quite hilarious. There are only a few missing units for the Beastmen now, with marked units, which we are likely to get in Game 3, and creatures like the Praeton. And even with these missing units, the Beastmen roster is now in a very good place. So, what are my overall thoughts on the final lore pack for Warhammer 2? Is it worth purchasing? Personally, I feel while there are some flaws and missed opportunities, it's certainly worth the purchase price, if you are a fan of the Beastmen or Lizardmen. It brings some much needed units to the Beastie Boys, provides the Lizardmen with a fun new stealthy playstyle, and has some decent mechanics. I'd like to thank Creative Assembly for allowing me early access to this DLC, and I'd also like to thank my patrons for their continued support. A big shout out to Hot Apple Pie, Cody Bonds, Alexander, and Solarith Magnetar. If you want to help support the channel, then check out my Patreon page for details, or simply leave a like or comment to help boost the video with the YouTube algorithm. I'd also like to give a mention to some channels I have been watching of late that you may enjoy. There is Brought to Bear, who creates fantastic Total War playthroughs, and has a series of interesting interviews with content creators, where they discuss many aspects of the Total War series. There is also Broken Load Order, who has a great back catalogue of videos, and has performed an in-depth look at the best PC setup for running Warhammer 2. Finally, we have a gentleman called Cypher, who uploads Warhammer playthroughs daily, and has some of the best faction-focused videos I have seen. He currently has analyses covering the Wood Elves, High Elves, and Dark Elves. Links for all 3 will be in the video description, so why not check them out. I'm Great Tiger, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.